Hi, welcome to Relish Books. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Maria Remarque. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name quite right. I believe he was a Swiss author, but this was published in 1928 and translated from the German language by A.W. Wien, I believe. The translation is really, really good. A lot of the time, when a book is very literary, I'm afraid of things being lost in translation. And I think some things are always lost in translation, but you can tell a really good translation from a bad. When I read Crime and Punishment, I loved that book. It was not a great translation. You could tell that some of it was clunky and awkward. This was beautifully done. I felt like, I didn't look up the translator, I felt like there was definitely British influences in the dynamic of the language. It felt very British, but I could be wrong about that. But I didn't know anything about the book when I read it. I didn't even read the back, other than that it was a war novel, that it's considered the greatest war novel of all time. It says so on the front. So I didn't know anything about it. I started reading it, and because of the way that it's written, the names should have told me right away, but it took me a little bit before I realized that it was actually a German soldier, because I thought that it was an American or British soldier. And I really enjoyed, as the story went on, I really enjoyed this perspective because it didn't focus on politics. It wasn't about that it was a German soldier. That wasn't the focus in any way. He was just a soldier, and it felt the same as if he had been an American or British or French or whatever soldier, because the book is just about what it feels like to be in a war, what it felt like to be in World War I. And I have to agree, I think it is the greatest war novel of all time, definitely that I have read. And this isn't strictly a true story, even though the author was fought in World War I. All of these experiences, maybe the names of things might be changed. All these things didn't exactly happen the way they do in the book, but it feels 100% real. It feels authentic. And to me, it felt so much more real than any of the other war stories that I've read that were based on true stories. Because, for one thing, the writing was so good, which a lot of times can make the difference about whether a story feels true or not, is in the writing. But it just felt absolutely authentic. And again, just so much more true than a lot of these true war stories that we read that are very... I think the thing that really did it was, we read a lot of war books and they have a plot line. They're very novelized. So there's a plot, there's a place where we start, and there's a direction that we're going. But I feel like if you were a soldier in the war and you're just living through it, you wouldn't feel like you're in a plot line. You wouldn't feel like you were the character in a book. You would just be getting through it, And I think that's what makes it feel so real. It doesn't feel like a novel. It doesn't feel like a story. It feels like a life. And so I think that's what made it so incredible, what made it so horrifying and also beautiful. The companionship with this character's friends is probably the strongest thing that comes through to me, and I think the strongest thing that came through to him, and the best thing, I think he says repeatedly, the best thing about war is the friendship that happens between these men. But it is a very heavy read, very, very heavy. If you have a hard time with stuff like that, it's definitely a difficult one, but I think it is worthwhile. It's beautiful. Not just, even if you aren't even into war books, which it's not there's a lot of people out there who like reading historical fiction, particularly about the wars. World War I and World War II, a lot of the time, that's really like their thing. I like reading those stories once in a while, and I think it's important to read those stories once in a while. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite genre. It's very heavy, and I don't think it's good to just repeatedly go to such dark places all the time. But even if like war novels aren't your thing, it's a very worthwhile read just as a book and as an experience. That is really the word that I would use for the book, is that it is an experience, not so much a story or a plot line. Something that I will note, I don't know if it's particularly in this edition or if it's like this in every book, but you feel like the novel has ended on the last page, but you have to make sure to turn the final page without giving anything away. It looks like the book ends right here. Make sure that you turn the final page, and before the about the author, read this final paragraph, because it actually changes the entire story, just so you know. It could be easy to miss. But yeah, I loved it. Some of the best writing in general that I have read anywhere. So yeah, there's a lot that I feel like I could say about it, but I feel like it best explains itself. Just a gorgeous and tragic read that I think everybody should read it at some point in their life. So those are my thoughts on All Quiet on the Western Front. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.